Welcome back. Now we have our animation montages for Khaimera, and we need to set those variables here in Khaimera's blueprint. So for the attack montage, we've already set it to Khaimera attack montage. For the death montage, we need to use Khaimera death, and for the hit montage, we need to use Khaimera hit react. Now we also need to use Khaimera's animation blueprint, so let's select the mesh, and under animation, let's select Khaimera AnimationBP, and now we see Khaimera using its idle pose. Now unlike Grux, Khaimera has short weapons, so we need to scale these left and right collision boxes, which means we need to pause the anims. So let's search for pause anims and check that, and now we can select the left and right weapon collision boxes and scale them down. So I'm going to scale this one down to about like that, and here's the right. I'm going to scale this one down to about like that. So I'll compile and save. Now let's uncheck pause anims. And we can scale the capsule down just a bit as well, since Khaimera is not that large. And we'll take the mesh and bring Khaimera up. I'll turn off snapping for translating and move Khaimera, and that looks just about right. Okay, let's hit compile and save. And now we have Khaimera using its animation blueprint and those animation montages. Let's see what happens if we drag Khaimera into the world. So let's go into the enemies folder and Khaimera and drag Khaimera in. I'm going to hit the end key to bring Khaimera down. And let's go ahead and move these patrol points to a couple of different locations. And I'm going to bring the camera over here just outside of Khaimera's agrosphere. Right click and hit play from here. And check it out, Khaimera is patrolling. Now we can go ahead and shoot at Khaimera, and Khaimera is now aggroed. So it looks like Khaimera is working. Let's see if Khaimera attacks us appropriately. There's an attack, there's an attack, another attack, and another attack. So attacking is working. And let's test out death. And death works as well. Now, one thing we saw with Khaimera's death animation was that Khaimera doesn't even fall to the ground, which means we don't really want a long wait time. We kind of want Khaimera to just sort of disappear right away. So we can do that by going into Khaimera, clicking Khaimera self, and searching for death time. Let's set this to a small value like, say, 0.01. Let's compile and hit play and see how this looks. And we saw Khaimera play the death animation. It sort of did go back to the idle animation before Khaimera disappeared. So let's go into Khaimera animations, Khaimera death. And I think we'd like to add another montage section to this. So let's go to death, right click and browse to asset. And I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to call this Death B Trimmed, and I'm going to move this into Khaimera Animations. So I'll move here, and here in Khaimera Animations, I have Death B Trimmed. I'm going to scrub through to the end and right-click and remove frames 0 to 25. So we have this single frame here. I'll go ahead and save that, and in our Khaimera death montage, I'm going to find Death B Trimmed and drag it in and give it its own montage section. So right-click, new montage section, call this Death B. So now we have these two sections, and in montage sections, in this transition from default to Death B, you'll see this arrow here. I'm going to select this arrow here and select next section Death B. And I want this to go from default to Death B, so that looks good. It says default to Death B, so that looks good. Now, if you see anything else, you can always hit clear, and for default, you can click this and pick the next section and select Death B. So now it goes straight into Death B right after you play the default section. Let's go ahead and kill Khaimera again. And that looks a lot better. Okay, so I'm going to save everything. We now have a working Khaimera, and as a challenge to you, go ahead and create some new Khaimera enemy blueprints by duplicating Khaimera and change the skins and go ahead and change those stats such as health, damage, max walk speed, and maybe even change the size of the health bar and position, and so on. In the next video, we should have quite a few different types of enemies. I'll see you in the next video.